Hello and welcome to the Echo Chamber podcast. My name is Tony Groves and today we're giving thanks, folks. Giving thanks. As always, I'm joined by my co-host and the man who, was it 150,000 of those Russian bot accounts you were running for Cambridge Analytics?
Yeah, we will say nothing about that, Tony, but we know your political persuasions. We know that you're hard right. We have discussed.
Martin, you went through my wardrobe and saw my blue shirts.
Yeah.
It was a bit uncomfortable. I saw you sniffing them.
He has a rosette from Brian. I swear to God, Brian gave him a Fine Gael rosette, and he wears it on a Sunday when he's having his dinner.
More importantly, we're delighted to be joined in the Tortoise Shack by actor, writer, comedian, activist, and the Echo Chamber's very own Fairy Podmother, Tara Flynn.
Oh, I wish I were all those things. That sounds amazing. The Podmother thing sounds the best, though.
Tara, we said to you downstairs how grateful we are for you, A, to come on, and B, for the support that you've given us in this little. It just so happens today is 5 months we're having we're doing this.
Happy birthday!
Yeah, well, I have to say it was great when you agreed to come in, and we were really flattered, weren't we, Martin?
Oh yeah.
Don't be flattered. I'm only in Egypt. No, honestly, and I mean, like you can't.
Welcome to the gang.
Hooray! I feel at home. I feel so at home. No, but you can't give support to something you don't like, and I love the podcast. I love what you've been doing, and so it's very easy then to, if you get any bit of platform, what are you using it for? What are you saying with it? And I thought, let's just it was very easy for me to just say, you guys are great.
Well, it made a difference because it really helped us reach more people, and it actually
a good 3 to 5.
Yeah. We got 6 or 7 new subscribers.
My reach is very far and wide.
But it's. Do you know what actually is really funny about that? And this is why it's kind of topical now. You talk about your reach, and you talk about your reach in the arts and in culture, pop culture as well, as they say these days.
Yeah.
And yet, at the moment, we know that we're going through. We've seen the Ireland, This Is Ireland video, and I think Oliver Callan made the point that I think the video cost the price of 2 houses, and in the actual on the ground, people who are trying to make their own art, like you have recently just finished your show, Not a Funny Word.
Yeah.
And you put that out into the world. How do you find it? Do you get money from Culture Ireland? Is there?
I don't. And in fact, it was only that I was really lucky that This Is Pop Baby decided to produce the show, and then the Abbey co-produced it because we had brought it up through the Abbey. We brought it up sort of as a work in progress through the Abbey. So we were really, really lucky, or it wouldn't have happened. And it's weird you say, you talk about that, and this is something that I don't talk about too much, so it's kind of, I suppose, an exclusive for here. But like, I'm a writer, I'm an actor and a writer, and so basically what would usually happen is you'd get your tax on the acting work, if and when that comes in, or any voiceovers or any kind of more commercial work like that, tax on that. Then most writers are supposed to have an artist exemption, which I don't get.
Why not?
I'm not exactly sure, but I don't get it.
Did Paddy say he had to fight for the artist exemption?
I know, I've appealed it.
Well, now can I make a point? Ryan Tuberty got an artist exemption last year for a colouring book about JFK.
And the thing is, the thing is, it's not about
no, I don't individualise, but that's
or your kind of whether people sort of know the book or not, or some books will have a bigger boost. But by the same token, we're all supposed to get the exemption. And I know I'm not the only one, so I just think it's kind of interesting at the moment. And then people sort of assume that, again, people assume a lot of things, but they'll assume that. And it's kind of, what you get for a book in Ireland, unless the book sells internationally, or unless you're someone like Russell Cara Kelly, who just every household in Ireland will have a copy of the new book. You don't make money from it.
No.
I think it was, I can't remember. Oh God, I wish I could. A Cork author recently wrote, about 2 years, she wrote about the breakdown of publishing here and what that actually means. And in fact, so I'll sometimes take it in the neck from people going, oh, you're just some celeb who does X or Y, and sure, you've got all this, money and privilege and plenty of privilege, so absolutely, but maybe not the money always. And then they'll, by the same token, the same person will come back a few weeks later and say, you're nothing, you're no one, who's heard of you anyway? And you go, well, which is it?
Yeah. Well, and then you have.
I agree with both.
Then you have people who come out with like diet books. And they get their exemption, And they're talking pure bollocksology in the books. I mean, utter bollocks.
So that's neither here nor there. But the fact is, if you are a writer, and you should, like, the revenues rules should be quite clear on this. You're a writer, you're contributing, you're in the arts, you should get the exemption. And more importantly,
for the writing anyway. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
You know? But it's a really interesting one, and I'm sure we'll get to the bottom of it at some stage. But again, because the amounts are so low anyway, it's like there's no point fighting it to tooth and nail. But at some stage I'll approach it again. Like, but I think part of it has been sort of, oh, that's factual. And I'm like, my second book had 4 characters in it who were giving their made up perspective. So it's like, you know, I made them up. But look, it's fine. But it is something that people don't realise, that not everyone gets the exemption. I'm one of the people who doesn't get the exemption. Now, I've been very lucky with other kinds of work, but I'm completely taxed on those then. Yeah, which I'm happy to be.
What about other strands that you're doing? You do occasionally do some stand-up?
Yeah, I haven't done stand-up for a while. I just felt like, I think stand-up is an art form, and I think some people are brilliant at it, and I didn't think I was brilliant at it. I thought it was okay, and I could, much better emceeing, because I like to chat to people in the room. So that, and then, I can exercise my funny bone while chatting to people in the room. Ideal. That's like my favourite combination. Stand-up, I felt like I'm not writing amazing gags. I'm more of a storyteller. And I suppose it's only really recently with the sketches that I've done, and then that kind of writing evolved into the books, and then into Not a Funny Word, the show I've done most recently, that longer forms suit me better. That shorter form, that gag-based, punch. I don't think I'm great at that. And I was very happy to leave that to people who were great at it.
And did you find it stressful standing on a stage? Like, anybody I've spoken to does stuff on stage just find it extremely stressful.
Yeah, and it gets worse the older I get. I always thought that, the nerves and the stage fright would get better with experience, because you've got more tools in the tool belt. You've got more flying miles under
you have the snappy put downs.
You've got the whole thing. No, it just gets worse and worse and worse from 3 o'clock on the night of a gig, on the day of a gig. Can't eat, can't drink, can't do anything. And I'm sort of crippled with nerves, can't speak properly to anybody. And then once I'm on stage, I love it. But the day is gone. It's just the nerves.
And then you crash afterwards, every sudden just crash.
High as a kite for about 2 hours. So, sort of up on adrenaline for about 2 hours, and then complete crash.
Well, that's what you need a green room for. You need that bottle of whiskey. You need just the blue M&Ms. You need those little comforts afterwards.
Total diva.
That's why, most green rooms are, the loo backstage. So I do love the green room idea too. Mind you, this is Pop Baby. It was brilliant. What they did was, so we were in the complex. They did the whole Where We Live festival, which was brilliant. So Veronica Dias was talking about housing, the housing crisis, and then Peter Daly was talking about money and austerity and the crash.
Orla Hegarty came in, I think, at one stage.
Yeah. And there were exhibitions, and it was just brilliant. But it was the complex, and they made it a stage space. They also built, basically out of plywood down the back, a green room space,
right,
which is where all the stage crew and all the acts were hanging out. But it just meant you had that little moment where you could go. But it was so funny, because usually unless it's a designated theatre, there isn't a green room. The green room is, the cigarette machine down the back, kind of crouching down behind it. But they made a little plywood green room. It was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant.
If we ever get a few bob, first thing we're doing is putting in a green room a proper.
What are you talking about?
This is a green room. This is a green room.
The garage.
The canapes. I love the champagne.
That's the champagne socialist in me. That's all that is. But there was something interesting though in we said about stand up and the state of Irish comedy. I spoke to you earlier about an act I'm obsessed with, a young man up north called Big Dirty Fry on Twitter.
Yeah, I can't wait to catch him.
When you see this guy, Michael Fry has his name down, but I see guys like this, and I wonder about how do they catch a break into the industry.
That I don't know, because the industry seems to go in phases anyway. You're starting out. When you're starting out, if you're good very quickly, which I definitely wasn't, you're fresh and you're new and you're the new story, and you kind of catch that upswing then. Or you keep at it for years and years, and then you've some kind of a breakthrough. It could be anything. For me, I guess it was Racist B&B and doing those videos, doing the stuff with the marriage equality referendum, which I just did because I wanted to throw in and help out, and I didn't know what else I could do. But there's a weird thing when you've been around for a while, you kind of like, it's like, oh, you're not fresh. No, oh no, not the new story. So,
you're not on the zeitgeist.
Yeah, you're not on the zeitgeist. But so it's very hard to say because, and like I was saying to you guys, even about this podcast, you can't create noise around something if it's not good or if that momentum isn't there organically itself. You've got a quality product. For want of a better word, I hate the P word, but look, you've got a quality product and it gets a bit of momentum because people want it. So there's always a bit of that. Like when those videos went viral for me, and they're not even the most massive, they haven't hit millions or anything like that. But, you know, you suddenly get corporations coming and going, can you, we want to make a viral video. How? And I'm going, I don't know. Miley Cyrus and a box of kittens? Do you have Miley's number? I reckon that'd go viral. But it's like, I can't write something and make it go viral.
No, you don't know till you put it out there.
You don't know till you put it out there.
Do you remember when I put up a tweet a few weeks ago and you said to me, that's going to go viral. And it went viral and whatever, had like 3 million impressions. And I just turned it off. You know, you can mute it. So I had to mute it after a few hours. I muted it. And I checked back in and people were giving out to me, you know, you shouldn't have, that tweet was distasteful. And I said, the funny thing about it is, I've tweeted 49,000 tweets. I don't know what's going to go viral, and you don't.
Well,
you haven't a clue.
Yeah, your successful thing was, retrospectively, I have an opinion on it.
The kind of classic example there is Brendan O'Carroll.
Yeah.
Brendan was on the scene for years and years and years and really grubbing and trying to make a living out of it.
Working constantly,
And I remember him on the Late Late and he'd been on and he cursed. Do you remember he cursed on the Late Late? Oh, that was a scandal. He cursed.
The F-bomb isn't an actual bomb, everybody.
He got back on again and he was warned he wasn't allowed to use any bad language. And he was describing, he's sitting there beside Gabe Byrne and he's describing himself as a big guard behind that camera and he has a rifle. And he had the crosshairs on him and he's going, go ahead, Bolly, say fuck.
So it's reported speech, you know, it's fine.
But he has, if you look, he grubbed really hard. He worked really, really hard. And whether or not you like Mrs. Barnes Boys, that guy is really making money and I'm delighted for him.
Well, you always want someone to succeed. I think it's very, there's an assumption that people are bitter and some people are bitter in this business we call show. But by the same token, mostly, and especially in a place like Ireland, where the community is small, even across cities, it's small, the different cities, it's small. And so, like, you want to give people a boost, you want to help people out. And, you know, with that kid you're talking about now, I don't know how much of a kid he is, and I don't want to diminish him in any way. But, that young lad, he, first of all, he's got that natural momentum. He is good by the sounds of it. Then you just need one cheerleader. Who's got a bit of connection or who's got the next bit of platform. Maybe an agent. It might be just someone who's got a radio show and can give you that platform. Yeah. But if you don't get those platforms or that bit of wind behind, so you can create the sort of upswing or your work creates the upswing. But there's no one way. So it's the Brendan O'Carroll way. There's all kinds of ways. And then you can have the very lucky break early on. And then you've got the standard career in showbiz, which is up and down and up and down and up and down, and you just got to take the rough with the smooth.
But that is most people's life career cycles is up and down.
Exactly,
that's just the reality.
It's the same.
But we do these awful things in our job every few years where they say you have to plot your career graph. And, you know, there's only the odd psychopath who's one that goes straight up, you know, and everybody else is like, oh no, what was that? Oh, do you remember the time I created that credit card policy thing that came out and it cost the bank about 20 million in a fine or whatever it is, you know.
You are right about that. I remember years and years ago, I worked in a cabaret years and years ago, and Johnny Logan had won.
Wait, here's the showbiz gossip we've all been waiting for.
Johnny Logan had won the Eurovision. You remember he won it once and he was going back to go again. Johnny was such a nice guy. Yeah. Very nervous, very young. Now, I was younger, that was only about 15 or 16.
Don't close your eyes.
I'm telling you, you've no idea. They used to come from...
my awakening memories.
He couldn't sing this publicly because he couldn't release the single, or it could only be for a sort of a select crowd. Well, they came from everywhere for Johnny. Everywhere. And Joe Cuddy was doing the MC. Joe Cuddy was a great storyteller. So Johnny used to come into the bar and I was the resident barman, and he'd be there at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Johnny, after he came off stage, he'd be exhausted, having a drink. A very nice, very nervous guy. Now, for over the course of, say, 2 weeks, every night, me and Johnny, just the two of us, have a chat, how'd you get on, how's the show, blah, 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 a few pints, and he'd go off home. So he lives out close to me now, not far away from me, right? And I never forgot Johnny, and I see him the odd time.
I never forgot Johnny.
That's pretty romantic now.
Oh,
so
God,
lovely.
I think he's brilliant.
That's so lovely.
But his career has gone up and down. So I see him now, and the last time I saw him was coming up to Christmas, and I'm driving by the bank, and I see him at the bank, and I roll down the window. Hey, Johnny! Happy Christmas! And all he ever does is look at me and goes, who the fuck are you?
There's my Christmas guy.
Well, he used to have hair. He used to have hair.
But and I know, because I meet him on the street, and I go, hey, Johnny! And I'm like real over the top with it, and I know he's looking at me going, who the fuck is this guy?
Well, it's interesting, because it's like, you say up and down and up and down. People sometimes say to me, what do you think? Why do you think you haven't quite broken through? You haven't quite made it? Oh. And I'm like, well, I feel like I have made it in that I've been able to stay in this business. Mm. I've been able to stay in it. I started acting in 1990. So it's like I've been able to stay in it, sometimes really successfully or financially flush, and sometimes not at all. But I've managed to stay in it. Now, we'll see what happens next year. And I've never been averse to rolling up the sleeves. I've cleaned toilets, I'll clean toilets again. Mm. But it's like, hopefully that won't have to happen. But if it does, it does. And it's just, for this long, I've been able to stay in the business.
And is it harder for a woman in the business than a man?
I don't know. Well, traditionally and this is something that Waking the Feminists last year was brilliant. Yeah. It took away, we are all guilty of, internalizing certain things. I had definitely internalized plenty of misogyny growing up in this country. And I had always gone, well, after the age of 26, there are no roles for women. So you kind of have to try and keep going in the business as best you can until you get to play nanas and witches and hags over the age of 60. So I've got to hang on in there for those difficult middle years between 26 and 60. And other than that, things will be peachy.
Brilliant.
But the first time with Waking the Feminists, I sort of went, why are there no roles for women? Why aren't there more women playwrights? Why aren't they getting that little boost, that platform? Mm-hmm. So, there's kind of an assumption that, there can be an assumption that if a lad writes a play, like what was it somebody said about young adult, work? Yes, if a man writes about his teens, it's a coming of age.
That's
piece.
Right, yeah.
And if a woman writes about her teens, it's young adult fiction.
Yeah.
And it's like, so there's something slightly more worthy about a male perspective. And that's sort of shifting now, which is brilliant.
But that's really interesting because there is all those tropes and I'm guilty of them,
We're all guilty of them.
He's so guilty of them. He's way beyond anybody else.
Oh, sexist Tony. No, we've all.
Look how red he is now when I said that. That's just unreal.
I feel the same though, and it's like we're all on a fecking, we've had the P word product, we've got J word journey, which has been hijacked by the X Factor, but it's a perfectly good word for someone's path. Mm. But it's like, we've all been there.
Oh yeah.
We've all taken so much of it in and just laid it down as norm or fact.
But it's nice when you're breaking these taboos and breaking these tropes, when you think of, I remember getting really irritated when I said online, I said that basically Me Too isn't a phenomenon. 6 men losing their jobs is not a phenomenon. Now it'll be a phenomenon if it bloody breaks.
It changes things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you've done, and it helps when it goes and you say now Me Too becomes time is up, becomes time is now.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's nice to see those sort of things, but let's not have the other guy put his hand up and say, you've gone far enough. You've gone too far on this.
Gone too far usually means I'm missing some of the horrible behaviours I used to enjoy doing without consequence.
Or it was just horseplay, or it was different in my day, or whatever lens we choose to put on it.
And we all have our lenses. So it's, there's no point demonizing people either. But when you come after, and this is something really important, when you come after the patriarchy, you're coming at it for equality's sake, that it is about equalizing people's experiences. That's, one gender isn't allowed to just, clap hands on, what? Okay, he clapped hands on me, Your Honour. Was it a round of applause? You're not allowed to grope someone and just get away with it because you say it's a bit of horseplay. It's like if it's ruined someone's night or made them more afraid to go out or whatever is the situation, re-traumatize them for something else, there should be consequences and it shouldn't be acceptable. But when you come after the patriarchy, that it is about that it's dismantling it for everyone. That it also liberates men. And that, because the patriarchy is why we have the 1%. That's, that is what it is.
Oh, well, I mean, the patriarchy, and men, I'm not saying men don't get it, but a lot of men, we're so used to it. But even the little things, we'll say, lone parents, 98% women.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, that doesn't, in a normal world, that really doesn't make sense, but that's the patriarchy at work. That is the patriarchy at work.
And then it's like, things like, access and parental access and things like that for men, and all those concerns that men do have and are very valid and vital concerns. But because we've sort of put care on women so almost exclusively, it becomes harder then. So it's about unpacking it all, and it's hard.
Well, it's
hard work.
It's shedding those layers of the onion and shedding the roles that people are put in. Man, hunter, gatherer, woman, take care of the cave.
Me hunt, gather down.
And you got to split these roles down, and you got to say, why? Is there something that makes women genetically better carers than men, or men genetically better bosses than women? And there's not really.
There aren't really.
No,
there can be physical differences in terms of strength and testosterone levels and stuff like that, but in terms of those innate qualities, I don't really see a huge difference.
I can't see how nature versus nurture. Are we born this way, or is it because we were in this role from very early on?
Yeah, and way before we were all born, for a very long time, those roles have been sort of embedded now. I think it's really interesting. I mean, I don't know anyone who has the answers, but I think they're important questions, and I think they're very exciting. And certainly, and I'm loving the dismantling of the patriarchy. It's brilliant. I'm enjoying it.
It is. No, it's great to watch what's actually happening, but it's also worrying from my point of view to see so many.
Because you're so sexist,
But I see so many people kicking back and saying ridiculous questions.
I know.
They frame the debate differently. They frame the debate about, like, it reminds me of Fox News. Like Fox News would operate where they'd say, we have this guy in from the Palestinian territories, or disputed the territories, as they like to say, and we have this guy in from Tel Aviv. And then we're fair and balanced, and then they'll turn to the guy from the Palestinian territories and they'll open the conversation and go, so you stand over child murder, don't you?
Yeah.
And we have this now where we're going, well, we'll have a panel show and we'll turn around and say, so, the host will then say, do you think this has gone too far? And you go, hang on guys, that's a loaded question. Because if you ask that question, you already have prejudged the answer. You don't, you've made a decision. So you're actually looking for someone to defend that it's not. And clearly, what we need to actually do is, a lot of people have to look at themselves first and foremost.
And it's difficult work, and it's uncomfortable, and we're all having to do it, and that's whenever something's uncomfortable, people don't want to do it, and they push back. But I think you're right. It's time to reframe a little bit.
Well, it must be difficult too, because it's very hard in Ireland, such a limited media. We have two groupings, and if you, as we've seen, if you say something one grouping doesn't like, you don't get back on their radio stations. And the other grouping is, they have to go to Jurassic Park to pull in a few dinosaurs that we've been listening to for 50 years.
There was a wonderful moment.
Let new voices on.
There was a wonderful moment recently where someone on News Talk had someone from the Irish Examiner on to talk about something that the Irish Times had printed, because they don't let people from the Irish Times on News Talk because of the disputes. And I just thought to myself, going, wow, this, because Tara, you quite rightly pointed, it's a tiny country.
Yeah.
Tiny little bubbles, and they all intersect.
They all intersect. I mean, pretty much everything intersects, and it's that can be really positive. That can be really positive. I think it's one of the reasons why, when the world is going backwards, it feels there's regression on so many basic human rights, civil rights, human rights. That here we've a chance to be a little bit ahead of that, because we can all contact each other and go, hey, let's all stick together on this.
I've been talking to some women comedians, and I don't like saying women comedians. They're just comedians who happen to be women.
Oh yeah, well that's cool, but it's there's also a different perspective sometimes. So yeah,
and they find it more difficult to get that space, that time in we'll say the public arena. And it's a very, very small circle. It's a teeny tiny circle in Ireland. So how do you break that circle? How are you managing to do it where others can't, or others are finding it like an impossible wall to get through?
Well, there were two things. Well, when I started, there were very few women. We had done the Nulas in 1995.
Yes, I remember
And
that.
before that, there was basically Anne Giltee and Michelle Reid, who now still do comedy. Anne's in the Nulas. Michelle is part of Dublin Comedy Improv, and she's a playwright and a teacher. And but it was basically, they were the only two I'd seen really doing stand up. And then the Nulas happened, and then Deirdre O'Kane happened, and then there was loads of people sort of came and went, but very few people seemed to stay. It was, I mean, it is hard, and again, you get back into the roles, and it's like when people often disappear from show business unless they're super wealthy when they reach childbearing years. That can happen.
Yeah.
So they disappear at that stage.
Because I mean, how are you going to survive?
How are you going to go out at night and do a gig for 50 quid?
But how are you going to survive when you can't go out and do a gig for 50
And that's
quid?
it. Exactly. How much might childcare cost if you don't happen to live near your mum? Or, all of that stuff is a factor in show business. So it's like, how can you go out and do a play if the theatre doesn't have a crash?
Jeez, that's me. I was thinking comedy for a while. I'm going on comedy completely.
No, stay. No, we need you. We need every voice. We need every voice and all the perspectives.
Even the bad jokes, Martin.
But it's an interesting one. And then I suppose how I broke through was I'd been in the Nulas, so my name was already out there. I had a few contacts and connections. Then I was in the improv at the same time as I was doing the, in 1995, when I was first doing the Nulas, and we used to have the comedy Christmas party, we used to fit into the downstairs room, all of the comedians used to fit into the downstairs room of Jewel in the Crown.
Right.
Across from the International.
Yeah.
And like we'd have prizes like a can of air freshener or,
but it was a token, but it was a bit of fun.
It was a bit of fun. But then, suddenly there's a business around it. When we started as well, there was no career to be had. You did your slot in the International, and people say, "Oh, you're only saying that because I have this thing about don't gig for free if you can, because what it's doing is it's cutting out those life-saving gigs between getting a stadium gig or being on the telly and having to work at other things. And now most people I know starting out have to hold down another job and use comedy as a hobby, do those gigs for free. And I'm sort of saying there are two aspects to the getting paid. You need to be paid because it's not just your work, your time on stage. It's the work you've put into the writing of it and the building of the persona or whatever it is you're doing. And work has value. And that's the other thing. Telling audiences that comedy or music or whatever is either free or 50 quid or 70 quid or whatever it is in the Three Arena. What happens to the middle?
Yeah.
What happens to the gigs that we just all used to go to? And then people say, it's so cushy for you because you got all that stage time, back in the 90s or whatever. It's like, we had the International basically.
Yeah.
This was even pre the Laughter Lounge or any other loads of lovely gigs that have popped up now on Shaw and all those great things. But so you'd go on and then you'd have to wait 3 months because you'd just been on.
Yeah, that's right actually. Yeah.
So you didn't get tons of stage time.
Does that make you feel like you should go abroad? I mean, that's what
People
sends
do.
people abroad?
That's what sends people abroad. That's what sends people abroad is that, but even in Britain now, that phenomenon, the free gig, you're also telling audiences this isn't worth it until it's in a stadium.
Yeah.
And it's like, could be the same material.
Yeah, but what actually I'm hearing, and I don't know if you were in it too, Martin, is you say how you broke through. Well, it sounded like perseverance, really. It sounded like just kept on.
Someday I will break through. That's how I feel.
But like it's
I'm still, yeah.
There's nothing, but that's I listen to a lot of Dan Carlin's podcast, the history podcast he does, and he said after 56 years I'm an overnight success.
That's it.
And that's what he said.
I can't wait till I'm an overnight success. I will have such a great overnight.
Yeah, exactly.
But there isn't a huge amount of investment going into comedy in Irish media circles. There's not we'll say like in the TV station.
Everybody got excited about the young offenders recently.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
It is brilliant.
It's so good. I auditioned for a part and I didn't get it and I was heartbroken because the scripts were so good. I'm going to petition them next time. I'm going to absolutely...
The Bus was so good.
It's just so good. It's just so good. It's just brilliant. And Dairy Girls as well. Absolutely fantastic.
I'm sort of saving that one for a while.
But it's so good. It's so good. And it's just like, there is, but again, like they were overseas investments.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah. They came, and this is the best comedy out of Ireland usually comes out Channel 4.
Or Sky, and they don't have a ton of money either, but Sky as well. And I'm not doing down RTE. They I know they don't have. They really don't. They're when people, especially when people compare them to the BBC or Channel 4, they don't have the available audience or the advertising revenue to make.
The simple fact is, and we've been told this time and time again by people, that the cheapest thing RTE or TV3 can do is a panel show.
Yeah.
If you get a panel, you need one room, 4 people, or whatever it is, and you have that panel show, and it's something like, say to put it out, someone said it's 12 grand per hour or whatever it is. Let's say it was
locked off cameras, maybe not even a camera crew.
Yeah, and they said, but if you want to make 1 hour of comedy, it's a multiple of that.
Or drama.
Yeah.
But they should, here's the thing that happened, and it was quite interesting, was that we were doing a sketch show years ago called Stew, that was written by Paul Tylock and Paul Woodfull. And at one stage we were told, well, your budget is kind of a drama budget. And all it was we were still changing in the toilets of the houses and the location sometimes. Yeah. And so it wasn't like we had massive amounts of trailers and things like that. But what they meant was they had just started to do hidden camera stuff. And that was so cheap to make that now comedy was being made for that kind of no budget. So scripted comedy was going to be too expensive to make. And it did slide back. And then you saw fewer scripted comedies. And I think it's a shame because the talent here, my God. Look at Alison Spittle's Nowhere Fast. Fair play to RTE making that. That was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
I met Alison a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, you did? She's fab, isn't she? She's the best.
Yeah, very nice person, I have to say. Very nice person.
We had a good laugh last week, and part of what Terry McMahon said was that he made Charlie Casanova for €942.
Wow.
He made the entire film for €942, and its world premiere was at South by Southwest.
That's brilliant.
So you don't understand, people, art has a value, your work has a value, what we do matters, and it's almost trying to get that message through to some of our younger people as well, because we've had Steph Costello in here, who's a young journalist, aspiring journalist, and she's been told her main roles in some other places were to keep eyeballs clicking on a screen. And that wasn't what she came into journalism for.
Yeah.
And you kind of say, and then she's going, if you can't do that, you don't get paid, kind of thing. And you're going, whoa, what about the story? What about the...
Well, I like the way TV3 has moved towards sort of comedic panel shows, political comedic, like Tonight TV3. I like that they've moved towards, they have 2 clowns representing it, and that the panel that comes in is usually a lot of gobshites. Yeah. I love that. I think it's very funny. I think it's great.
Oh my God.
Stop giving it oxygen. Stop giving it.
Oh my word. I suppose the thing is, we do have to remember, then this is the thing, and we can't be bitter. We just don't have the available audiences here to have the advertising revenue to make the shows the way they can make them in Britain or further afield. So I do want to give, and so then when something like Nowhere Fast happens, we have to give massive props. Because what happens there is then they might not have a massive budget or a comparable budget to an overseas show. But what they do is then everyone pulls out all the stops. Everyone pulls out all the stops and goes the extra mile. And so fair flips to them all. Fair flips.
I like the idea of, and they do quite well in the UK, where they'll have a panel show, and it'll be a mixed panel show. There'll be, for want of a better word, serious people, and then there'll be comedians, and it's a great combination, and it works really well. But we don't really see it here at all.
The other thing is though, I might get asked to do the odd panel show, and I'll go, if I can come on and just be funny, then that's great. But then you'll find they say, so what do you think now about that housing crisis? And I'll go, I can't be funny about this.
Well, I can, but I wouldn't be able to leave the studio.
But it's like, no, I don't find it funny. So that's just, so then suddenly you're just this comedian on a show going, I think it's really terrible. I think it's awful. I think it's an epidemic. And I wish they could do more. I don't know what I can do. Yeah. And I feel powerless. And it's like, well, she wasn't very funny, was she? When you strip off your superpower, as a commentator, you have to know what it is that you have to say. And it's like, I will always say,
well, hang on, I'm going to disagree with you. There's a lot of commentators that just wing it. They just go on and they just wing it.
But at least they might have background or, some of them probably do just wing it, but...
We've had some of the best housing experts in this room, and we've listened to them and we've been informed by them.
Those are great shows.
And we have great, we literally sat there and listened to Mel Reynolds tell us 5 ways he would tackle the homelessness crisis, and we would start to turn the tide within 6 months. And we said to Mel later on, listen, mate, next step for you is Tonight TV3. It's about those people same as in everything else. The talent is there. The answers are there. We just need to actually get it a platform, get it out there, and get more people engaged with the
solutions, maybe. Because I think people do get overwhelmed, especially with the housing crisis.
Yeah.
They get overwhelmed and depressed, and they just go, I can't do anything. I can't do anything. And then they don't know they don't know where to go next. And so I think, if people were able to engage with solutions, keep following this podcast. But if people are engaged, then they feel a bit more empowered and maybe like they can do something, and their voice does count. Maybe
we pick one thing. That's what we do, guys. We pick one thing. We say we'll go and say, can we get the legislation to make above shops? Can we get that changed to accommodate people? Then that follows into the second thing where you say, let's give that a tax break to give Airbnb people into those above, and that frees up the actual accommodation that Airbnb is eating up in the city centre. Yeah.
So we have great comedians who are also very political.
Yeah.
We do. And we hate to say his name here, but Oliver. He's our competition.
What do you mean? He's talented and funny.
You've become full showbiz types.
Yeah. Oh yeah. God, so slap us back in public. We'll say Oliver is so brilliant.
He's so talented.
Behind the scenes, bastard. He's got so many.
No, you've turned into proper divas. I'm so disgusted.
But we do have. There's great mileage in comedy, and politics together, and we have some really like Tara. We have there's really, really talented people, and they really take swipes at the political system, but they do it in a very classy way. Yeah,
I mean, but I suppose for me, because I'm really, I get left very cold by party politics, and so it doesn't fire me up. So that's why most of the stuff I do is about either personal politics or human rights things like the marriage equality referendum videos and things like that. Before that, I just did silly jokes and silly parodies and songs. And I think part of my job is just to entertain. I feel like I'm not doing that so much at the moment, so I want to rectify that hopefully after the 25th of May. But
after the victory.
Well, we'll see what happens. But I'd love to go back to doing slightly more silly things. But for me, I can't, if it doesn't fire me up, I can't take it on. So, I can't, because it just leaves me cold, so it doesn't make me laugh. So I love people like Oliver can take it on. They are fired up by it. But then, and not just Oliver, but lots of other political commentators, I kind of go, how much mileage is there in a man in a suit taking the piss out of men in suits? And so I get a bit sort of, I know the rhythm of this now, and I know sort of roughly what it'll be. But I mean, Oliver obviously takes it to a different level. But yeah, I kind of want to do silly crack. I used to love the improv most of all.
Have you considered going back on the road? Have you considered doing a tour or anything like that?
Well, I'd love to tour this show. I'd love to tour Not a Funny Word, which is about having to travel to the Netherlands for an abortion. Hilarious. Obviously, it's happened to me.
Do we talk about the fact that it's the same as the lads going to Vegas for the weekend?
Oh boy, wow, did that make my blood boil.
Yeah,
it's such a lonely and isolating and stigmatizing journey that it was like, but then, so that happened to me. So I was able to go, to limit it like that was really dismissive and horrible. But let's praise the bridges we cross it, and there have now been some positive pronouncements on this issue, so we will park that there.
Can I just say something which is to this?
No, you just can't.
No, and we're not going to go into it much more, but other than to say this nonsense of the tone policing that went on, and the stuff that's
going on.
Yes, that's going on, and we won't get into it right now because we're going to talk the 25th. You know what? I'm delighted that I think we're gonna achieve this, and finally it'll be put to bed. And there's another conversation to happen after that.
Yes.
But what I will say, which doesn't sit right with me, is the people that are writing articles currently, and I know you did a thread on this recently on Twitter.
Oh, sure, I'm always doing threads. I'm sick of myself.
But this thread was on the basis that you're going to the next time I see another article that says you lose because you're not having the debate properly or you're not behaving properly, and I'm just thinking, wow, everybody I know has been on the pro-choice side is absolutely making sure that they're being respectful. And I think, Martin, you have a great phrase for saying that when you say it's not about balance, it's about
proportionality. Yeah, it's not balance, it's proportionality.
And to have that little kick thrown, that shade thrown at the pro-choice side all the time, that has to stop, guys, because...
Yeah, well, it's sort of like, well, when you talk about respect, let's take their point about respect. So I have to go and sit in a studio with someone who's basically throwing all kinds of aspersions at me and my morality and my, goodness or lack thereof, my character, while they're denying me my rights. Now, they might not agree with the choice that I made, but they can't deny me my rights, but they are. And they're going to go on, and just because they use respectful language and maybe wear a suit or they're wearing pearls, they're more respectable than I am. And I think we've got to really, ask more of our journalists and for robust questioning of, why do you think it's okay to deny a woman cancer treatment as soon as she's pregnant? Is that moral? Why do you think it's okay to keep sending people away? Why do you think it's okay for the people who can't afford to go away or have a disability and can't travel or are ill? Why do you think it's okay to keep them at home and force them into a pregnancy they can't cope with? And when I say can't cope with, I'm not talking about, I just don't feel like it, which is often how we're framed.
Yeah.
But it could be the difference between someone becoming homeless or not. They might already have 3 kids and might be in an abusive relationship. They're already at their absolute stretch, and you're going to force them to remain pregnant. I don't see that as moral. So why are certain people being given the moral high ground? We are biting our tongues like crazy. By the way, we do respect people who think differently to us in terms of many, many people wouldn't make the choice I made, but they don't deny me my autonomy. They wouldn't force me to remain pregnant, then they would give me the right to consult with a doctor. It is very weird framing. That tone policing stuff is very weird framing.
And we're back to the patriarchy, really. We have media that's...
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit a lot.
But we're back to a media that's male heavy at the very top, and it's very male heavy at the top. So these perspectives are alien perspectives to them. But they all have mothers, they all have sisters, they all have...
But also, you're right, they do. And it's like, it's also not this big, mad, foreign, radical thing. It's being treated like it is. It's like, and those lads who write those pieces, they're not at the meetings. They're not canvassing. They're not, they haven't been on the marches. They don't see that they're warm and inviting and that we are really not only accepting questions, we're inviting questions because, there's no point, in people having unanswered questions on this. It is new. It's new to everybody. We've only just started talking about it. We've only heard one side forever. I got it at school. It was always, I was 14 in 1983. So I remember, sort of happening in the periphery. I remember all those discussions happening. And we've only just started to talk about it honestly and openly and say, well, whatever your beliefs about this are, there are other perspectives. So, that is something that I think, they don't seem to see that those discussions are happening. They're not there for them, but they're saying, you should do this. And it's like, we are.
Yeah.
We are.
I find, that's what I'm staggered by. And I keep seeing these articles. I think I replied to one and said, I'm going to write a deep and profound thing.
Oh, you did. It was very funny.
But you just have to go, because you have to almost poke fun at it. But the problem with poking fun at it, and this is the satire.
Seems bitter. Yeah. Seems bitter then. Yeah, I know. And as soon as, Together for Yes is launching this week. I'm not sure when this podcast is going up, but Together for Yes is launching this week. And from then on, it will be all eyes on the prize and all, positivity. And, because I know we can do this, but it's going to be conversation by conversation. And one of the things I would love to do is take my show on the road. I would love to, because so just to tell you what it's like, really, I tried to take back my own story of having to travel, the hypocrisy around it, the loneliness and the isolation, take the piss out of those a little bit, Okay. Oh, it's just me. I'm a spy. I'm on my own. Yeah. No one knows. No, I'm at the airport. Nobody knows. So sort of all that sort of stuff. But then when it needs to get very serious, and it gets very serious. We puncture that with jokes or, a gentler side of things, but we let it go where it needs to go emotionally. But it was really interesting when we were doing it as a work in progress at the Peacock, and this older man was there, and he's one of the first hands up for the Q&A afterwards, and he goes, excuse me, I'd like to say something. It's like, yes, yeah, please. And I was going, okay, now he might say, I hated it, whatever it is. Now he's every right to say it. He's paid his money, whatever. And he went, that was really funny. And I was like, oh, that's such a compliment. And I'm so thrilled. And thank you so much. Few.
Yeah.
And then he said, I was expecting it to be declamatory and preachy and angry. And I was like, I said, I understand why you might have been led to believe that. I said, but we're going to have to talk about why you were led to believe that. I said, because all we're doing is telling our stories, being as truthful as we can, being as respectful as we can, while people have genuine questions.
Stop, you're being shrill. Stop.
See? This is all you can hear, Tony.
Yeah.
He's so sexy.
He's awful.
So sexist.
It just drips off me.
And it is interesting. That's become the narrative.
Yes.
Instead of, wow, people are finally talking about this. Okay, now that we're talking about this, even more conservative politicians are saying, I've listened to all the evidence, and I've heard personal stories from my constituents, and I'm now going to be voting for repeal. And when that happens, again, it's that sort of backlash of, wait, this is uncomfortable work for me to do, so I'm going to say you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, why haven't I moved? Like even these conservative politicians have moved. So it's very interesting.
Well, I think if you went on the road, and we'll use this as a plug, if you have a venue that seats about 1,000 people, 1,000 to 5,000.
Intimate's good.
And
Intimate's fine.
Tony, everybody can DM Tony. His messages are open. So he'll arrange that. We'll take 10%, 15%.
No, listen,
I wouldn't be buying any cars, lads, but I'd be very happy if you get the bookings. Then we'll discuss it. No, this is Pop Baby. We'll take. We're absolutely open to, even if it's not a designated venue or your local theatre is a bit worried about the subject matter. Although it's a very fun show and there's nothing to be afraid of. I think, if anyone wants to get in touch with This Is Pop Baby, I'm sure we can work things out, but I would love to. This is what I feel I can add. I always feel like a bit of a sham when I'm a commentator on this, because I'm just one person that it happened to. And even when I first told my story was down at Amnesty's event at Electric Picnic. She's not a criminal. And, I basically, I told the story and then I took the papers the next day and I switched my phone off for a week. Because I was adamant, like, I don't want to be the poster person for this, because there are two elements to that. One, I don't know enough about it. I've only travelled the once. And also, then it becomes like as if it's about me, whereas my whole point is, it's the person next to you at the bus stop. It's the, it could be the comedian on the telly. It could be, your sister, your mother, etc. Yeah. So I thought, this is the way to do it. So then there was the weirdness of, they were contacting me and I had a book out about a month later and they would say, we won't have you on to talk about the book unless we won't have you on to talk about the book. We will have you on to talk about your story.
Oh God.
And I'd go, well, I don't really want the story to become the only thing about me. Look at it 2 years later, it pretty much is.
But isn't that awful? And again, that's the picture. You're a complex person. There are many aspects to your character.
I hope so.
Your life is not one single issue, nor are you involved in one single, but the entire focus is the one single issue.
Well, it's a bit of goss or a bit of dirt, I think, is when. So you come in to talk about something. Now, here's the thing. So you either get now, I'm so synonymous with it now because Roisin Ingle obviously used her platform and it was the same week and we were actually quite supportive of each other. Like, oh, Jesus, I'm really scared. Are you really scared? I'm really scared. What's going to happen? Are we going to lose every bit of work or, what's going to happen? So, but we were there for each other and it was great because when you have a little bit of platform where you are, you have been on telly or whatever, you also have more to lose.
Yes, absolutely.
Because your work is dependent on people liking you. Are you likable enough? And does this make you unlikable? All that. And for some people it does. That's the simple truth. So, and then for other people you just become slightly controversial. But so I did work really hard to go, I'm not just about this, but I'm happy to talk about it because I want to destigmatize it. It's normal. If you're traveling this week, you're not alone. You're not weird and you're not cruel. You're not any of the things that some people might say. You're doing the right thing for you in that moment. I'm sure you've considered it deeply. But so now I'll get the call because they want me to talk about repeal or about my own story or repeal with the perspective of my own story or don't mention repeal at all. And both of those are problematic. Just don't mention it at all. So what's ended up happening is that over the last few months, that there has been a little bit of a distancing with more public things. And I think it's just because people are trying to be impartial with the referendum. I'm no longer seen as impartial, and fair enough. I'm not.
I mean, first of all, you're a woman.
Yeah,
you know,
I find it really weird
when people are odd.
Yeah, I find it weird. I completely agree. But some people are trying, or some people are managing it. Other people are being told not to mention it at all. That kind of thing. So, and I can't not mention it at all. I just can't do that. So, I suppose the referendum's what I'm doing at the moment. But it wasn't that I chose that. It was sort of that circumstances became other things fell away a little bit more. That's fine. I'm now choosing to be very zen and be very positive and say, now I've got more time to do referendum stuff.
Well,
so
I suppose you didn't create the referendum. You're not the instigator. I am, to paraphrase, the referendum landed on you. You didn't land on it.
Imagine if I had that kind of, wouldn't that be brilliant if I could just go, here lads, have a referendum. Would have taken away a lot of pain and bullshit off my shoulders. But
there's a Facebook app for that.
Oh, there's an app for everything. But you know what? It's become really positive thing, and brilliant things like being able to do the show. That's really cathartic for me. It's not just me going on and talking about me, just like I'm doing now. I love it really. But I can talk about all kinds of things, and so for me that's putting it back into a humor and theatrical context, where it also means it doesn't take as much out of me. It takes the energy it takes to do the show,
but it
doesn't drag because the more you tell your own story, that it's still your story. It still was a horrible time, and a horrible thing to have to happen. Even at that, I will say I'm one of the lucky ones. I was able to go and get the healthcare. I did have a credit card. I was able to go and get the healthcare I needed. So mine is a good story with, an all right. I won't say a happy ending because it's never a happy thing, but it worked out. It was the best decision I could make at the time, and I was able to get that care.
And because of the nature of your work, it could have landed on a time where you had no money.
Yeah, I wasn't working at the time. I didn't know. I had just finished a job, but there was nothing coming in for the next few months. And in fact, later that year, I ended up moving to London because things were so quiet, starting from scratch. Absolutely starting from scratch again.
We're only about 2 episodes away from having to move to London, Martin.
I've been to London
you'll be
already.
So big, you'll bypass London straight to New York.
yeah.
They have to get over the accents first.
Be competing with NPR.
I'll never get into America anyway, I think.
Well, actually, somebody said it to us recently, and they said, God, you guys talk so fast. And I was like, no, this is Dublin. This is the way we talk. And they were saying, no, but it's really fast. I go home, and I have a 20-year-old daughter, and I just sit there and it just washes over me. Our speed isn't huge compared to where the kids are there.
Yeah, it's like the shorthand of texting and online has gone into speech.
It's gone into the vernacular, and I'm lost half the time, and even that's so savage. What are you on about? Stop that!
He had to teach me what TL.
Oh, TLDR.
TLDR meant. I had no idea what TLDR meant. No idea.
Summing up. Basically, summing up.
No, too long, don't read.
Too long, don't read.
And that seems to be the problem with everything at the moment. Is too long, don't read.
Yeah.
We've moved away from, as you said, long form comedy. We've moved away. Now you want the snappy, real quick.
You want sketches. Sketches can't be. If you've got a 3-minute sketch, mine are around there. They're too long now. That's too long.
You wonder what Dave Allen would sit there and tell a story these days. Would that make television?
Would it make television? That's a good point, because Tommy Tiernan's live work is very much storytelling, and he's brilliant at it. And I love Maria Bamford, and her stand-up is absolutely amazing, and loads of stuff about mental health and her own issues, and she's fab. But her very show had to be sort of, it was ostensibly a sitcom, but with lots of very short scenes, and It's interesting. Does it make telly? What makes good telly? And from what I'm hearing, it's hidden camera stuff.
Yeah.
Still at the hidden camera.
No, we're not really. But I think in budgetary terms, we'll never be.
We're
I'm going to say it. We'll
we're
never be free of it. But
we're a tiny country. That is when you think Manchester is bigger, folks. It's very hard to have.
We are a country on the centre of the world stage. We have so much to offer to the rest of the world. They will come here. They will see don't like the wall. We'll tear that motherfucker down. Don't want to pay taxes. We'll fix that up for you.
No.
This is
Unless
the
you're a
country.
writer.
This is the country to live in. So I don't like people dissing, you're only the size of Manchester. We pay our politicians top dollar because we are centre of the world. Top dollar because we are centre of the world.
Do you hear this searing satire? I love it.
It's not going to work, Martin. It's not going to work.
I love it.
No, we are. We're a small little country. We're on the edge of Europe, and our humour reflects where we are.
I think so too. Yeah, it's lovely and bleak. It's lovely and dark.
It's so dark. And I love that really dark humour. I won't even... I was in a situation, all we had was dark humour.
Yeah.
And other people who were stuck in this situation with me, all we had was this real braveheart humour. I never laughed so much as I did in cancer wards. Oh. Never laughed as much. Sick, dying, and we laughed at the darkest things we laughed at. I love that humour. I absolutely love it.
It's healing, isn't it? And that's something that I think, like, with this show, people say, you can't make that funny. I'm like, I can make my own experience funny. I can't make the situation funny. It's not. But, being ill isn't funny. But it's very healing then. It gives you a little bit of strength. It gives you a lift. Helps you to process things. Just to process things mentally, laughter does. I think we're bloody brilliant at that here.
I'll give you just a little anecdote, funny situation. I was at one stage, this surgeon, a very nice woman, and she had come in to give me the rectal examination, and she had glove on and done the job, and she went off doing her rounds, and 5 minutes later I got up. I was terrible in the hospital, downstairs, go outside for a smoke. But I was going down in the lift, and she just happened to step onto the lift. Now, what do you say to somebody who's just had their fingers up your bum and you're sitting on the lift? You're standing on the lift. You have to have some conversation. You can't just pretend it didn't happen. Yeah. And I just looked and I went, was it good for you?
That's brilliant. Like, that's perfect. Yes.
But that's the type of humour I came across, and I loved it. There was a gang of us used to be in. I was in Blanchardstown for a month in the hospital. We used to meet up outside to have a smoke, and the security guard used to be always, but let's see it. The laughter, the absolute laughter we had. I mean, tears rolling down our faces laughing in the situation. These are people in dire circumstances. Yeah. They laughed and laughed and laughed. And it was that it's real Irish black humour. I think we do it better than anybody else.
I think we do, yeah. I think there's something in that.
Yeah, I like that. And so I think definitely you should go on tour. I think that has resonance. And I think it will have resonance with people if you go on tour with it.
I hope so. I'd like to. So fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
It's not really that controversial, like you were saying. This isn't that radical. No. It's just something that happens to people, and we need to talk about it honestly, and that includes humour. I'm
sick of people thinking it's not a revolutionary event. It happens every day, and let's get this thing put to bed.
Let's make people safe.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And when it's over, and we're going to do the big panel show when it's all over, come back into us, and we'll have some. We'll do the M&Ms and the green room and whatever it is.
Listen, I've just enjoyed these canapes and champagne. Don't change a thing. Don't change a thing.
Yeah. We won't tell you where they came from.
Yeah.
Little fortune stuff. I was driving the digger.
There's that humour again.
Yeah. It's not working, Martin. At least you're laughing, and that's what matters, isn't it? He's delighted with himself. Tara, look, we really appreciate you coming in.
Thanks for having me.
I think what you've covered a lot today. But what is important is people understand. I think what's important is, first of all, art and literature, writing, comedy. It all has a value. People support our arts. Make sure
I'm going to cry.
But what you do matters. It's not okay. And what we're also facing into now for the next few weeks in terms of reference, that matters greatly as well. But it all comes from a good place. What you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve with your work and with your activism, and that's to be admired. And
thanks. I do my best, and we can all only do our best, and we can all only offer what we can only start from where we are, and then we hopefully. Move on to the next thing.
Yeah, and it's not like an end of an argument. It's just part of the process. Just simply part of the process. So we better learn to talk about it civilly and amicably and respect each other's opinions, because we're going to be talking about it for a very long time.
Very long time.
Yeah.
It's not going to go away.
No, this isn't going away, and it's not all over on the 25th. That's just the first start, the first step.
Fingers crossed.
So thanks very much for coming in to us. Well, I have to say, it was great to have you in here. It's lovely when we get people who are in who are actually funny.
Oh, God. I hope not funny.
So I have to suffer his face for so long. It's just, you see this, I have to stare at him all the time. It's awful.
I said it downstairs. There's plenty of handsome to go around. Come on now. Come on.
And all I do is generally, I say, people don't get my sense of humour because you're not funny, Tony. It's that dark.
Not true.
Listen, folks, we want to thank you guys for listening. You do keep the show on the road. Subscribe, leave us a review, tell your friends. You can get all our previous episodes on our website, echochamberpod.com. You can send us an email to the echochamberpod@gmail.com, and you can follow us on Twitter at echochamberspod. Thanks for listening.